or sauna. Trevor's ready.
Kate was saying one of the things that he likes about you is your aggressiveness and your lack of fear when it comes to just throwing it down the field. How have you seen that develop over these last couple months here?
Yeah, I think just one, getting more comfortable and familiar with the scheme. I think a big thing is the timing and the relationship that I've continued to develop with all the receivers. Sometimes in practice that's the time to be a little bit more aggressive and push the ball downfield, give guys one-on-one, see who's going to be one of those vertical threats that we feel when there's a one-on-one coverage, the ball's coming. It's a jump ball, and we're going to kind of take our man on that. So just really emphasizing those things in practice, trying to come here with some sort of agenda every day of what we're going to focus on to get better. And I appreciate Kate for those comments. I don't think he's seen my aggression as a runner just quite yet, which I'm excited to showcase this fall. But yeah, I think just trying to make sure I'm getting better at all aspects of my game, and especially developing timing and relationships and trust with the receivers and tight ends, I think, is a big piece of that.
Now that you've been here for a while, where's your excitement level for this season to come?
I think it's huge for a number of reasons. Just thinking to myself probably last week, talking to Jake Renfro and Rico when we were in Vegas of, this is all of our last camps. Camp is hard, camp is tough. There's dog days of it, but the fact that it's my last one and the fact that I'm doing it at a school like Wisconsin, kind of turns up the excitement level a little bit, turns up the heat. I don't think it's, fully hit me. I think that the thing I'm most excited for is getting there, getting my room set up, and then, getting into the first install and the first, script for practice tomorrow. I think that's, once I start doing that, I'll be like, all right, it's here. It'll be kind of like the night before Christmas when you go to sleep and, you can't really sleep, but I could probably get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. We'll find a way to, make it through day one with the right mindset and attitude. So just a lot of excitement. I think there's a lot of guys in this locker room that are, sitting in a similar position as me. So, it just makes it a little bit more meaningful when, you get to do it with guys that are in the same shoes as you, that have gone through adversity, and that, this is really their last or our last opportunity to kind of, put ourselves out there and, get Wisconsin and ourselves back to where we want to be.
Billy, a lot of people talking about the schedule. Austin was just saying that he kind of sees it as an exciting opportunity to play the best teams. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's exactly how he said it, I think, is how I worded it when I was at Media Day, and that's how I felt ever since, December 13th or whatever day I got here on my visit, of just, you want to be at the top of college football, you want to be at the top of the mountain, you got to go through the top competition, and we obviously have that on our schedule. I was talking to a quarterback coach back home, and he played in college and he played in the NFL for a couple of years, and he was like, this is an NFL schedule. Every week's going to be a tough game, and that's how it is the NFL. And the 4-quarter battle and kind of the gritty, wear team out, take it to the fourth quarter with one possession and it's anybody's game is, I think, all what we've been preparing for, and I think we're all expecting that. And there's a lot of good opportunities. So I think we're excited for all of it, but I think obviously we got our eyes set on August 28th or whatever it is when game one rolls around, and then we'll take it one game from time there and keep it rolling.
How did you grow as a leader when you were leading a team that kind of went through some adversity at Maryland too last year?
Yeah, I think there's always experiences that I've tried to take away for both myself individually and then me as a leader, more from the team's perspective. And I think throughout my whole career, whether it was as a backup coming in, starter, not having maybe the season we wanted to, and dealing with injuries, I think there's always lessons in that. I think some of the biggest lessons for me maybe as a younger player was coming in as a backup and winning or doing well, kind of doing whatever was asked of me. Taught me to kind of how to handle success of you come in and you play well and you do your job well, how to not be complacent and how to go about your business the next week, the next game in the right way. And then obviously last year the ability to handle adversity. So I think all throughout my career there's been different ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and I think this is my last chapter, and this is where I'm hoping to put it all together and use all those lessons, not only that the teams that I've been on have faced, but me individually, and lead these guys to somewhere great.
So using from Jada, what excites you?
I mean, besides just catapult numbers, the guy runs 23.5 miles per hour or something. But just his growth, I think when you come, when you step in this offense, obviously as a quarterback, receiver, we had a lot of new guys in the winter, but there's a lot asked of you, especially at the receiver position. We're not just asking you to be a vertical threat and run all the routes and do all the cool stuff. We're asking you to go, dig out and block safeties and be physical, just as physical in the run game, and have, have a role in everything we do, whether the ball is being handed off away from you or, you know, we're throwing you a jump ball. Just kind of the leadership he's taken on of himself, of, you know, taking accountability to all that, embracing it, getting better at, you know, literally every aspect of his game. Whether it's like I said, the vertical deep balls or the willfulness to go block and throw your shoulder in there and get dirty. Really just his growth from day one. I think, you know, we've asked him to kind of come out of his shell a little bit when it comes to all that stuff, and he's done nothing but embraced it, and just continued to try and get better every day. So I think he's in a good spot, and we're excited about, you know, I know I'm excited about him, and I think we're both in a good headspace with each other, you know, excited about kind of the timing and the chemistry that we've developed over the last, you know, 6 or 7 months.
You're one of several quarterbacks who transferred within a conference. I mean, when you decided to enter the portal, did you want to go to another Big Ten team? Did you want to go somewhere else, or did it matter to you one way or another?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's obviously something in the back of your head, but I don't think that was, you know, a main thought of mine. I think the best thing for me was just finding the right opportunity, the best opportunity for me, and it happened to be in the same conference, and, you know, it's playing out how it's going to play out. But I think there's, you know, it definitely is. It played some piece of being familiar with the Big Ten. Obviously, I was at Wake Forest my freshman year, so I had some familiarity with the ACC, but I don't think it played a big role at all. I think, like I said, I went in there with kind of what I was looking for my last year, and it happened to be in the same conference. So, you know, jumped on, and then we're not looking back.
Do you think there's any benefit in maybe knowing, I guess teams know you know them?
Yeah, I think there's some. I think you can look at it both ways, like you said. You know, teams have played me, defensive coordinators have played me, I've played them. But I think, you know, that's all stuff that, you know, may come into play when we get into a game of, oh, you know, I played this team last year, or I played this defensive coordinator when he was at this school 2 years ago, whatever it is. I think there's, you know, obviously in the coaching and scouting report of in that realm, in that world, people do go back and, you know, you find ties when you've had interactions or games against these guys. So I'm sure it'll come into play down the line, but I don't think that was, you know, too much in my head, you know, when making the decision and up to this point.
What should fans expect to see from the offense this year?
Yeah, well, besides giving us our scheme statement, I think just getting back to playing the game the right way. And, you know, like I said, playing the game the right way can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. I think for us, just being the most toughest, you know, physical, nasty, and disciplined team. And, right, all those words I said, there's a fine line to that. That's our job as players and, you know, as coaches for them to kind of push us to that line of, you know, really just wearing teams out, whether it's up front, you know, whether it's we're throwing the ball 60 times a game as receiving room and quarterback room and, you know, skill room, we got to hit on those. Just little stuff like that of, you know, playing the game the right way, wearing guys out, you know, really, you know, when teams come in here, they should expect a 4-quarter fight, and, you know, that's going to happen. You know, it's our job to kind of make sure that happens on our terms, and we play the game how we want to play. But I think that's, you know, kind of the mindset for me, obviously not being here before, is what I take it as, is just playing the game the right way, the Wisconsin way, that, you know, when you look up Wisconsin football and the tradition and history, kind of what pops up and what, you know, what does it make you think of? I think that's what we're trying to get back to.
Billy, with just the summer conditioning, just how did it help you being healthy, or as healthy as you can be after spring ball? How did it help you with your conditioning and, you know, just your body, like, compared to years past?
Yeah, I think it felt great. I think, you know, it definitely woke up maybe the younger Billy in me with some of the lifting and running and stuff. But the summer, you know, obviously you come off the off season, you come off the season, you spend, you know, most of the winter getting healthy. You know, I kind of caught my footing there in probably early to mid-spring, and then having the whole summer to be healthy, you know, feeling my legs were great underneath me, everything felt good. It really, you know, like I said, makes me feel young again of going back out there and, you know, really the changes that I've seen just in the last probably 6 to 10 weeks of my body composition is something that, you know, as an older guy, as a 22-year-old, I'm definitely happy about. And, you know, that was kind of a good, you know, motivating factor to having a full summer healthy, you know, which I haven't had in a few years. So really just making the most of it. And a lot of that was, you know, with my body physically, mentally, mostly all that things. And then, you know, with the timing of the receivers, having this opportunity to come out, you know, 3-4 times a week and get our timing down, you know, make sure we're on the same page. I think definitely, you know, I think a lot of guys, you know, on the offense, we made sure we maximized it with the receivers and tight ends and, you know, making sure that, you know, all the timing routes in the passing game and everything that, you know, we took full advantage of the summer.
Given some of the shuffling you all needed to do on the offensive line in the spring and then bringing in more bodies after the fact, how do you view your role in building rapport with those guys kind of on the fly here in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think, you know, the offensive line room, you know, you take me out of the equation, Coach Blas, and the whole O-line room, it's like a fraternity. You know, they're a very tight-knit fraternity. They're a very tight-knit family. They take care of each other. They take care of their own. And then, you know, you implement me in that role, obviously having good relationships with a lot of the guys already. Really just, you know, trying to find that, you know, cohesiveness of, you know, making sure we're on the same page, right? The calls that I've learned already and have some comfortability with, you know, having the comfortability to make those calls when maybe there's young guys or guys that I haven't had reps with, so that they know I know, and that, you know, we're on the same page of, hey, if you see it, you can call it. If I see it, I'm going to call it. That way we're all getting, you know, on the same page, whether it's in a blitz walkthrough right here or in practice, whatever it is. So I think, you know, the offensive line room does a great job with all that, and then it makes it, you know, easier and fun for me to come in and implement myself in the quarterback room as a whole of, hey, you know, they're going to be our best friend, you know, as long as with the protection, as long as I know that I know, we'll always be on the same page and we'll always be good. You know, I'll always have kind of all the tools and answers at my disposal to, you know, deal with any issues we may see up front. But I think they do a great job already, so it's made it fun, you know, when they bring in a guy like Davis, and we're able to have a lot of fun and, you know, kind of really hit the ground running with, you know, stuff that they've already been doing before he, you know, even before I showed up, before me and Davis showed up, and some of the new guys. It's made it easy.
I know it's going to be a while away, still a while away, but what do you think it's going to be like facing your former team?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be bittersweet to some extent. I think, you know, I was there for 3 years. A lot of my, you know, developmental years were there. I grew up. I came in as a redshirt freshman, got the opportunity to stay close to home and play. Had my first career start, you know, won the job last year. There was a number of things that, you know, I'm extremely grateful for my time there. And then, you know, like I've always said, I've always been big on relationships. I still, you know, have a lot of good relationships within that building, within that program. You know, a lot of people that I still keep in touch with to this day on, you know, a pretty regular basis. So it'll be good to see all of them. And, you know, just like I said, you know, there's no hate, there's no distaste or anything, but they're an opponent on the schedule. So we're going to handle that week like any other week. But yeah, I don't think it's, you know, not circling or anything. When it comes, and, you know, we'll go about it the right way and handle our business, and, you know, we'll go on to the next one.
Did you hear Coach Loxley at Big Ten Media Days? He said that he admitted that he lost the locker room at times last season. Did you experience that, and did that give you any perspective on what it's like here in this locker room?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I can't speak to that from my perspective. I felt, you know, it was obviously a tough season when you face adversity, you know, injuries, losing games, close games, all that stuff. It doesn't make the, you know, winning is fun. It makes everything a little bit, you know, in your life better, a little bit easier. So that was obviously tough. You know, I think, you know, when you look at it, we finished up 4-8, and, you know, 4-6 going into that last game I played. I think we weren't practicing like a 4-6 team. I don't think there was ever, you know, quit or anything like that from the locker room. I obviously, you know, can't speak to his perspective, but I think a lot of the guys, you know, that, you know, I was still close with, Dante Trader, Ty Felton, guys that got drafted, guys that, you know, maybe are some still there, that, you know, we really tried to keep the guys tight, and, you know, the season wasn't going our way, but I think we still, you know, tried to do our very best of attacking every day, every practice, every game with kind of the right mindset. And, you know, at some points I felt like we were doing everything, you know, correct but winning, and, you know, that's not a fun feeling. And, you know, it leaves with a lot of self-reflect of, hey, what can we do differently, what can we do better. And I think that's just, you know, kind of what the state of the season was last year for us. But no, I can't speak to that quote. I don't, you know if I felt it from my perspective, but, you know, everyone's got their own opinions. It doesn't make it easier when you're losing and stuff. So